Continuing from the previous chapter, Lin Dong, while exploring the depths of the ancient treasure vault, discovered a relic belonging to the Eight Extremities Sect. Inside the grand hall, numerous astonished gazes locked onto the ancient stone pedestal. More precisely, they were fixed on the 3 imprints etched into its surface. What a fierce fist and tint! Both Song Duan and Peng Fei's faces were filled with shock. When Mu Sha had been sent flying, they too had felt the terrifying fist and tint emanating from the stone pedestal. Lin Dong's eyes flickered as he quickly grasped the situation. It was clear that the Eight Extremities Sect's legacy lay within this stone pedestal. Yet, the explosive power of that fist and tint was truly terrifying. At this moment, Mu Sha, who had been knocked away earlier, charged forward once more, his face somewhat ashen. His gaze was fixed on the stone pedestal, as if he was barely restraining himself from smashing it to pieces. However, he quickly calmed down. This stone pedestal was no ordinary object. If he acted recklessly again, he feared he would suffer even greater humiliation. He had clearly realized that this stone pedestal was likely the most precious thing in the entire Eight Extremities Sect ruins. This brought him some comfort. At least he wouldn't leave empty-handed. Within the main hall, numerous eyes gleamed with a mix of surprise and delight as they looked at the stone pedestal. However, no one dared make a move. For one, Mu Sha's earlier failure still loomed as a cautionary tale. Moreover, with so many people eyeing the treasure, whoever obtained it might find themselves in even greater danger. In the face of a sect's true legacy, the courage in everyone's hearts seemed magnified tenfold. Even individuals like Song Duan couldn't use force to intimidate others now. Everyone. After a brief silence, Song Duan was the first to speak. He glanced around the room, his eyes pausing slightly on Lin Dong before continuing. We are all here for the Eight Extremities Sect's legacy. From the looks of it, the inheritance resides within this ancient stone pedestal. We are not tyrants. Since we've come together, everyone should have a chance at the legacy. So, how about we each rely on our own abilities? Whoever can claim the inheritance will do so by their own fortune and skill. What do you think? Song Duan's words sounded reasonable, but the more perceptive among them could detect the hidden implications. From Mu Sha's earlier failure, it was clear that the fist intent within the stone pedestal was incredibly violent. Even someone at the second nirvana stage, like Mu Sha, had difficulty dealing with it. What chance did the others stand? Although Song Duan's proposal appeared fair, it clearly favored the stronger individuals like him. Still, there wasn't much anyone could do about it. In this world, power reigned supreme. No one was naive enough to expect true fairness from Song Duan. The fact that he was allowing them all a chance to try was already more than they could ask for. Mu Sha and Peng Fei, of course, supported the suggestion and nodded in agreement. Lin Dong merely glanced at them, his expression calm and indifferent, but he didn't voice any objections either. Seeing that no one opposed the plan, Song Duan smiled slightly and took a step back, saying, "If anyone is interested, feel free to step forward." It was clear from his actions that he had no intention of going first, likely worried about repeating Mu Sha's embarrassing failure. However, as cautious as Song Duan was, the others were even more hesitant. For a moment, an eerie silence descended upon the hall as everyone exchanged uneasy glances, none willing to make the first move. But this standoff wouldn't last forever. Staring at the ancient stone pedestal, greed flickered in some people's eyes. Finally, a first nirvana stage expert couldn't hold back any longer. Under the gaze of the crowd, he stepped forward toward the stone pedestal. Having witnessed Mu Sha's earlier failure, this expert was exceptionally cautious. His primordial energy surged from his body, forming a protective barrier around him. Only then did he carefully reach out his hand toward the stone pedestal. The grand hall was deathly silent. All eyes were fixed on the outstretched hand of the first nirvana stage expert. Under this intense scrutiny, even he was clearly nervous, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Finally, his hand made contact with the stone pedestal. However, instead of touching the fist imprints, he aimed for the dark finger hole nearby. For a moment, it seemed nothing would happen. But then, Lin Dong's eyes suddenly narrowed. Without warning, He kicked the first Nirvana stage expert with full force, sending him flying across the hall. The man, having been kicked away by Lin Dong, was momentarily stunned. Just as he was about to shout in anger, he noticed a streak of light shoot out from the finger hole, leaving behind a thumb-sized black hole in the spot where he had just stood. The black hole appeared bottomless, disappearing into a void. Around the tiny black hole, there lingered a terrifying, sharp energy. Clearly, if that man had been hit, he would have died on the spot. Gulp. The first Nirvana stage expert swallowed hard, his gaze filled with gratitude as he looked at Lin Dong. However, Lin Dong paid him no attention, his focus instead gravitating towards the stone pedestal. As expected, this thing was far from simple. Song Duan and the other two also stared at the tiny black hole on the ground with grim expressions, realizing how dangerous the situation had become. After witnessing the close brush with death, the crowd, who had previously been eager to try their luck, immediately lost their enthusiasm. Had Lin Dong not acted swiftly to save him, that man would have been killed instantly, and they couldn't count on Lin Dong stepping in to save them next time. As a result, the hall once again fell into a deathly silence. Even Song Duan and his two companions didn't dare make a move. Lin Dong frowned slightly as he stared at the stone pedestal. After a moment of contemplation, he finally took a step forward. As one of the focal points in the hall, Lin Dong's movement immediately drew the attention of everyone present. Even Song Duan and his companions focused their gazes sharply on him. Lin Dong halted just in front of the stone pedestal. With a thought, his primordial energy surged rapidly through his meridians. I'd like to see just how terrifying this fist intent inside the stone pedestal really is. His eyes gleamed with determination as he muttered to himself. Finally, he extended his hand toward the palm imprint on the stone pedestal. Under the watchful, unblinking eyes of the onlookers, Lin Dong's hand made contact with the palm imprint. In the next instant, his expression turned serious as he sensed a powerful and ferocious fist intent, like a dormant earth dragon, suddenly surge forth from the stone pedestal. The fist intent was vast like thunder, ancient and overwhelmingly forceful. It felt like the mightiest force under heaven, an unstoppable torrent of destruction. The fist intent rushed wildly up Lin Dong's arm, instantly turning his sleeve to dust. Lin Dong's eyes filled with concentration as his primordial energy roared out from within him, clashing with the invading fist intent in an attempt to force it out of his body. However, the moment the two forces collided, his primordial energy crumbled instantly. The fist intent seemed to be of a higher order, rendering Lin Dong's energy powerless to resist. Seeing his primordial energy collapsing, Lin Dong's expression changed. He hurriedly summoned his spiritual energy to assist him, but even with its help, he still couldn't withstand the overwhelming force of the fist intent. Lin Dong, use the fusion power of the ancient universe formation. This fist intent is too violent and sharp. Ordinary power won't hold up. At the moment when the fist intent was about to tear through Lin Dong's defenses, Little Mink's urgent voice suddenly rang out. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed. Without hesitation, he activated the ancient universe formation, drawing in his primordial energy, spiritual energy, and the devouring power into the formation above his energy core. A surge of gray-black fusion power erupted forth and once again collided with the fist intent. The two forces clashed violently, causing Lin Dong's body to tremble uncontrollably. However, this time, the anticipated collapse did not occur. The gray-black fusion power clung to the fist intent like a parasitic leech, gradually slowing down its fierce momentum. Moreover, the devouring power within the fusion energy began to take effect, slowly but surely eroding the immense fist intent. In the grand hall, as the crowd watched Lin Dong's face instantly turn pale the moment he made contact with the stone pedestal, they were all startled. Song Duan and his two companions, in particular, had a flicker of schadenfreude in their eyes. However, just as the smiles began to spread across their faces, they suddenly sensed that the overwhelming fist intent radiating from Lin Dong's body was quickly diminishing. Seeing this, their expressions immediately changed. Could it be that Lin Dong had actually withstood the terrifying fist intent, which even they found formidable? If so, didn't that mean he was on the verge of obtaining the sect's inheritance? Their eyes flickered with intense emotion. A moment later, all three of them stepped forward in unison, extending their hands toward the stone pedestal as well. As the thunderous fist intent was being devoured by Lin Dong, his mind suddenly blurred. Vaguely, it seemed as though an ancient scene flashed through his consciousness. In that scene, it was still the same ancient grand hall, and Lin Dong could faintly make out that it was the very same hall they were currently standing in. At the center of the hall stood a similar stone pedestal, quietly resting in place. Before the stone pedestal stood a thin and elderly figure, barely half the height of the pedestal. Yet, the aura emanating from his body was so fierce and overwhelming that it seemed capable of shattering the heavens and the earth. It was as though with the slightest movement, he could cause the ground to tremble. The figure in the image only revealed his back. Then, Lin Dong saw the old man slowly raise his hand and casually press his palm forward. This palm appeared ordinary and unremarkable, but as the force from it swept through the grand hall, the very space around it twisted. An indescribable, ferocious fist intent burst forth like a crouching ancient beast suddenly springing to attack, making the viewer's heart quake. The palm landed on the stone pedestal, yet the terrifying fist intent, which should have been powerful enough to shatter space itself, didn't even leave a scratch on the pedestal. Instead, it merely imprinted a half-finger-deep mark on its surface. This wasn't because the stone pedestal was made from an especially durable material, but rather, the mysterious old man had reached a level of mastery where his power was completely under his control, directed with perfect precision. After leaving the palm imprint, the old man followed with a punch and then pointed with his finger, each move creating a mark, another fist intent, and a finger imprint on the pedestal. Lin Dong could vaguely sense the presence of martial arts in these techniques. It seemed that the palm, punch, and finger strike represented powerful martial techniques, but he felt that there was something even deeper about them. The true essence of the eight extremities lies on this stone pedestal. It belongs to whoever is fated to claim it. As Lin Dong pondered over this, the ancient figure gradually faded, leaving behind a distant voice, as if echoing from the ancient past, resonating in Lin Dong's heart. As the voice faded away, the scene seemed to transform into reality. Lin Dong found himself standing before the stone pedestal in the vision. Swoosh! As Lin Dong appeared, the palm imprint, fist imprint, and finger imprint on the stone pedestal suddenly transformed into three beams of light that shot into the air, condensing into three glowing orbs, floating above the pedestal. So this is the inheritance of the Eight Extremities Sect? Seeing this, Lin Dong's heart leaped with joy. His gaze swept across the orbs, and he reached out toward the one corresponding to the palm imprint. Just as Lin Dong reached out, his expression abruptly changed. His gaze flickered behind him, and he saw three figures materialize. It was none other than Song Duan and his two companions. As soon as the trio appeared, their eyes gleamed with greed as they stared at the three glowing orbs above the stone pedestal. Although no one said anything, they all understood perfectly what these orbs represented. After a brief moment of hesitation, they shot forward without delay. Song Duan and Peng Fei moved the fastest. Clearly wary of Lin Dong, they didn't dare to snatch the palm imprint orb he was reaching for. Instead, they each rushed toward the fist imprint and finger imprint orbs. Their speed was incredible. In a flash, their hands reached the orbs, and immediately, their faces lit up with joy. It was obvious they had realized just how valuable the contents of these orbs were. Seeing these three interlopers, Lin Dong's anger flared. He had absorbed a significant portion of the overwhelming fist intent from the stone pedestal, and it was clear that these three had taken advantage of the situation to seize their chance. This blatant interference ignited a deep fury within Lin Dong. He had always been the one taking advantage from behind, but this time, he unexpectedly became the vanguard for these three, and it looked like they were even trying to snatch away what was rightfully his. Just as Lin Dong's anger surged, he saw something that made him so furious he almost laughed. Mu Sha, who had previously quarreled with him, Seeing that the fist imprint and finger imprint had already been taken by Song Duan and Peng Fei, suddenly turned his gaze and reached straight for the palm imprint orb in front of Lin Dong. Courting death. Lin Dong's eyes gleamed with cold fury, and just as he was about to strike, Little Mink's voice suddenly rang out, "Wait." The voice came so abruptly that Lin Dong was momentarily stunned, and his hand slowed considerably. Seizing the opportunity, Mu Sha darted forward, his face lighting up with joy as he grabbed the palm imprint orb. He even cast a mocking glance at Lin Dong. With their spoils in hand, the three of them showed no intention of lingering, as the space around them seemed to emanate a repelling force, pushing them outward. Damn it! Lin Dong's face darkened, and he was about to give chase, but Little Mink lazily glanced over and drawled, "What's the rush? Did you notice something?" Lin Dong gritted his teeth, annoyed at Little Mink's casual demeanor. However, he quickly calmed down. Although Little Mink often liked to joke, he wouldn't cause trouble at a time like this. If that was the case, then it meant the wily creature must have discovered something important. So boring. Little Mink was slightly taken aback by Lin Dong's swift composure, having expected him to fly into a rage. Seeing Lin Dong's reaction, he pouted and said, "If you had gone to snatch those 3 items, you would have completely missed out on the true inheritance of the Eight Extremities Sect." Little Mink's gaze was fixed on the stone pedestal, and though the palm imprint, fist imprint, and finger imprint had already vanished, its eyes only grew more intense. "Place your hand on it." Hearing Little Mink's soft command, Lin Dong hesitated for a moment, then slowly reached out and touched the stone pedestal. Boom. The instant his hand made contact, Lin Dong's expression changed dramatically. A pale hue appeared on his face as he felt a vast, overwhelming fist intent, as immense as the sky itself, erupt from within the stone pedestal. This fist intent was identical to the one radiating from the elderly figure in the vision. The fist intent was formless and invisible, yet it felt as real as anything solid. It was vast like an ocean, and Lin Dong was but a small boat amidst the storm, about to be capsized at any moment. Under this tremendous pressure, he felt incredibly insignificant. Even his legs trembled slightly under the oppressive force. Crack. Suddenly, cracks began to form on the surface of the stone pedestal. The fissures grew larger, until finally, the pedestal shattered completely. As the stone pedestal broke apart, an intangible mass, though in Lin Dong's eyes, it seemed like the most ferocious and explosive force in existence, slowly floated out and hovered in front of him. This is fist intent? Lin Dong's pupils contracted as he stared at the strange phenomenon before him. He could feel the terrifying power contained within. The fist intent of the Eight Extremities. This is the true essence of the Eight Extremities. The things from before were merely inferior versions. Had you taken them, you would have been directly expelled from this place, let alone stood a chance of obtaining the real fist intent, Little Mink said calmly. Lin Dong took a deep breath, still reeling from the realization. From the vision earlier, he understood that this fist intent of the Eight Extremities was left behind by the terrifying Elder. Whatever level that Elder had reached, he had been able to condense fist intent, an intangible and elusive force, something far beyond Lin Dong's current capabilities to even grasp. Thinking about how precious the fist intent was, Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Thankfully, he hadn't grabbed one of those orbs earlier, or he would have truly missed out on this treasure and ended up with something far inferior. No wonder the Elder had said that the true inheritance was for those destined to obtain it. Clearly, the earlier 3 orbs had merely been bait. Lin Dong grinned, calming himself. Only then did he reach out to grasp the fist intent of the Eight Extremities. The energy showed no resistance and smoothly entered his body. Lin Dong could feel the fist intent settle quietly within his energy core, no longer showing any of its earlier ferocity. Yet, he knew that with just a small nudge, it could unleash an incredibly destructive power. This thing was like an amplifier. In the future, no matter what attacks Lin Dong used, as long as he mixed in a trace of this fist intent, its power would instantly skyrocket. This was the true inheritance of the Eight Extremities Sect. Kid, you've still got a lot to learn. When you've got eyes as sharp as mine, you'll be able to roam the heavens and earth without any worries, little Mink said with a smug chuckle, unable to hide the pride in his voice. Lin Dong couldn't help but laugh in response. He had to admit, little Mink's insight had been sharp. If it weren't for his intervention earlier, Lin Dong would have been ejected from this place and never gotten the fist intent of the 8 extremities. Let's go. It's time to head out. There are some debts that still need settling. People can't just take advantage of me, Lin Dong, that easily. Lin Dong chuckled, but his gaze gradually darkened. Though it was true that if those guys hadn't interrupted, he might not have gotten the fist intent, the feeling of being robbed was still infuriating. And since he was feeling angry, he certainly wasn't going to let the source of that anger go unchecked. With a flash of cold light in his eyes, Lin Dong's figure began to fade, until he completely disappeared from the space. In the main hall, a wave of commotion stirred. Everyone was looking toward the stone pedestal, where Lin Dong and Song Duan's trio had their hands firmly pressed against it. A faint, powerful energy was emanating from the pedestal. Little Yin stood beside Lin Dong, glaring at the three from Song Duan's group. He furrowed his brow, holding back the urge to smash these irritating fools with his iron staff. Until Lin Dong gave the word, he always restrained his emotions. Crack. Just then, a slight sound came from the stone pedestal. The crowd watched as Song Duan's trio trembled slightly before stumbling backward. However, instead of looking disheartened, their faces were filled with joy. Seeing their expressions, the crowd's faces shifted slightly. Could it be that Song Duan's group had obtained something from the pedestal? The trio ignored the crowd's attention and glanced at Lin Dong's back. Their eyes flickered, and Song Duan waved his hand. Let's go. It seemed they knew their earlier actions had surely angered Lin Dong. Although they weren't afraid, they also didn't want to confront a man who might be on the edge of fury. Now that they had the inheritance, they figured that once they cultivated it successfully, even Lin Dong wouldn't be able to maintain his calm in front of them. Hearing Song Duan's order, their subordinates nodded quickly, preparing to leave. Leaving just like that? Don't you think that's a bit irresponsible? Just as they were about to retreat, Lin Dong, who had been standing with his back to them, finally spoke with a faint smile. He lowered his hand from the stone pedestal and turned around, his eyes full of amusement as he gazed at the trio. Seeing Lin Dong call them out, Song Duan's trio narrowed their eyes slightly. What do you want? If it hadn't been for me holding back the fist intent from the stone pedestal, do you think any of you would have been able to break through? In a situation like this, it's fair that anyone who sees the inheritance should get a share. But not only did you take what was rightfully mine, you even snatched something that was almost in my grasp. Isn't that going a bit too far? Lin Dong said with a smile, but his eyes were filled with a cold glint as they shifted toward Mu Sha. He spoke slowly, his tone casual, but there was a clear warning in his words. Lin Dong, inheritance like this is claimed by those with strength. If you didn't manage to seize it, it just means you lack the ability. What are you trying to do now? Throwing a tantrum? Are you expecting us to hand over the inheritance we've obtained? Mu Sha sneered coldly. Moreover, earlier, you took the majority of the demonic dragon hound's bloodline outside, and we didn't hold it against you. But don't think you're on the same level as us. We're not like Shikuan, who's just newly entered the second nirvana stage, he added, his tone dripping with disdain. Song Duan and Peng Fei exchanged glances but remained silent. These two were clearly much more cautious. Even now, they refrained from speaking harshly to Lin Dong, indicating that they still harbored some reservations about him. The crowd in the grand hall quickly understood the situation. It seemed Lin Dong had first entered the stone pedestal and found some treasure, but before he could act, Song Duan and his group had barged in and taken it for themselves. It was clear what would happen next. Lin Dong wasn't someone who would take such a loss lightly, but there was no way Mu Sha and his group would willingly hand over the treasures they'd claimed. This confrontation was inevitable. Many in the crowd began to grow excited at the prospect. The more chaotic things became, the better for them. Perhaps they could even benefit from the confusion and snatch some treasure for themselves. You're right. Inheritance here is claimed by the strong. However, I'm afraid you're not quite at that level yet, Lin Dong smiled slightly, but his words caused many faces to change. Oh? Heh, Lin Dong, defeating Shikuan seems to have made you overconfident. Although you've heard this many times, I'll say it again. Don't overestimate yourself. Sometimes, taking a loss isn't such a bad thing, Mu Sha said, his voice dripping with menace. His expression made it clear that he now harbored a killing intent toward Lin Dong. Hand over the inheritance you took. Lin Dong raised his hand without further words, a calm yet commanding gesture. You're courting death. Several of the experts behind Mu Sha roared in anger. Mu Sha's gaze locked onto Lin Dong, and after a moment of tense silence, a strange grinding sound came from his throat. He sneered, Kid, you're not qualified to talk to me like that. Fine. I've been wanting to see for myself just what this supposedly famous newcomer is capable of. Let's hope you're not all talk. As soon as his cold words fell, Mu Sha's eyes turned completely sinister. He stepped forward, and a massive surge of primordial energy erupted from his body like a volcano, flooding the grand hall. The oppressive force was so overwhelming that everyone, except for Song Duan and a few others, immediately retreated, hurriedly activating their own primordial energy to fend off the pressure. Mu Sha's figure transformed into a black shadow and shot toward Lin Dong. His overwhelming energy condensed into a crushing force, barreling toward Lin Dong with terrifying momentum. Seeing that Mu Sha had finally lost his patience and launched an attack, Little Yan's eyes turned bloodshot, and he was about to charge forward. However, Lin Dong waved his hand, signaling for him to stop. With a mere thought, Lin Dong summoned his primordial energy and spiritual energy, swiftly forming a defensive barrier in front of him. Boom! Mu Sha's attack slammed into the barrier, producing a deep, muffled sound. Though the intense impact caused ripples to spread across the shield, it did not shatter. With the combined power of his first Nirvana stage energy and his abilities as a one-seal heavenly talisman master, Lin Dong was able to hold his own, even in a head-on clash with a second Nirvana stage expert like Mu Sha. No wonder you're so arrogant. You've got some skill, but your luck is about to run out. Mu Sha sneered as his first attack was blocked. With a swift movement, earthy yellow primordial energy surged from his body. It transformed into a vast wave of yellow sand that filled the air, a sight that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Clearly, Mu Sha wasn't planning to prolong this battle any further. Yellow Sand's bone-eroding palm. Within the yellow sands, a cold shout suddenly rang out. The swirling sands condensed in an instant, forming a massive hand made of yellow sand. This enormous yellow sand's bone-eroding palm, filled with a bone-corroding energy, surged toward Lin Dong, enveloping him completely. The surrounding crowd was taken aback by Mu Sha's overwhelming display of power. They knew well that the yellow sand's bone-eroding palm was one of Mu Sha's deadly moves, rarely used unless necessary. To see him unleash it so swiftly indicated that Lin Dong's capabilities were indeed extraordinary. Even Song Duan and Peng Fei's eyes narrowed as they watched. Their strength was on par with Mu Sha's, and this attack wasn't something they would take lightly either. Lin Dong lifted his gaze, his pupils reflecting the massive handprint of yellow sand barreling toward him. He could feel the sharpness of the attack and the trace of murderous intent it carried. A puff of white breath escaped from Lin Dong's mouth. Then, under the watchful eyes of everyone in the grand hall, he threw a punch. It was an unremarkable punch. No intricate martial techniques, no overwhelming surge of primordial energy. It looked completely ordinary, with nothing special about it. However, what no one knew was that at the moment Lin Dong threw that punch, the fist intent of the 8 extremities within his energy core began to stir. Following Lin Dong's intent, a portion of that fist intent surged forward and merged with his punch. Boom! At the instant the fist intent emerged, Lin Dong's simple punch transformed, as though the final stroke had been added to a dragon painting, giving it life. A terrifying and indescribable force exploded outward with incredible speed. Song Duan and Peng Fei's faces changed drastically. In that moment, they felt as if Lin Dong's form had merged with the ancient stone pedestal. They didn't fully understand what was happening, but they could sense that Lin Dong's simple punch now carried an unimaginable destructive power. Bang! The punch, infused with the fist intent of the Eight Extremities, collided head-on with Mu Sha's yellow sands bone-eroding palm. Break! A deep, powerful voice burst from Lin Dong's mouth. In the next moment, all eyes widened as they saw Mu Sha's full-force palm strike shatter into pieces on impact. Behind the shattered palm, Mu Sha's face turned deathly pale, his eyes filling with shock as he stared at Lin Dong in disbelief. The grand hall fell into complete silence. Every pair of eyes was filled with a stunned expression that was hard to conceal. They could hardly believe that Mu Sha's nearly full-powered strike had been so forcefully obliterated by Lin Dong's seemingly simple punch. What terrifying fist intent! For those like Song Duan, their expressions grew even more serious. They could clearly sense the incredible fist intent emanating from Lin Dong's punch, an intent so fierce and explosive that it seemed capable of tearing apart the heavens and earth. They simply couldn't comprehend how Lin Dong could possibly possess such a terrifying fist intent. They knew very well that fist intent, though intangible and elusive, was incredibly powerful and not something that anyone at their level could even begin to touch. Only the truly powerful could comprehend and cultivate such a fearsome force. At that level, martial arts themselves often became irrelevant. With that kind of intent, every gesture, every movement, carried the strength to tear apart the heavens and the earth. How is this possible? Song Duan and Peng Fei exchanged glances, seeing the disbelief in each other's eyes. But, being as shrewd as they were, after the initial shock, they both seemed to understand something. Their bodies shook slightly as realization dawned on them. The true inheritance of the Eight Extremities Sect isn't martial arts. It's the fist intent of the Eight Extremities. The expressions of Song Duan and Peng Fei instantly turned bitter. A deep sense of regret surged within them. While the martial arts techniques they had acquired were decent, they were nothing compared to the fist intent. The joy they had felt moments ago at obtaining the sect's inheritance was like cold water being dumped on them, leaving them cold and hollow. Under the gaze of countless astonished onlookers, Mu Sha's pale face grew even whiter as he staggered back, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and disbelief as he stared at Lin Dong. His voice came out hoarse. "This is the fist intent of the Eight Extremities? You actually obtained the fist intent of the Eight Extremities?" The last words were almost a roar, his eyes brimming with greed and resentment. Just moments before, Mu Sha had taken pleasure in the thought that Lin Dong had walked away empty-handed, but now he realized that, once again, Lin Dong had come out on top in the Eight Extremities Sect ruins. "Thanks to you," Lin Dong responded with a faint smile, his tone laced with sarcasm. Mu Sha, upon hearing this, nearly spat out blood from frustration. Though he didn't fully understand what Lin Dong meant, it seemed that in some way, his actions had contributed to Lin Dong obtaining the fist intent. Could it be? Mu Sha's thoughts raced as realization began to dawn. His pupils contracted sharply. Those three orbs were just bait? The real fist intent was still within the stone pedestal. Correct, but there's no prize for getting it right, Lin Dong said with a grin. Then, his gaze turned cold. Without further words, he stepped forward and threw another punch. Once again, the fist intent of the Eight Extremities surged from his energy core. The energy around Lin Dong's body became like a rumbling storm, filled with a fierce, explosive force. The space within the grand hall trembled violently as the thunderous fist intent swept toward Mu Sha like a devastating storm. Damn it! You've already obtained the fist intent, and yet you still want to attack us? Do you intend to eat the meat, and not even let us drink the soup? Who do you think you are? Mu Sha roared angrily, feeling the oppressive force of the punch as it caused the flow of primordial energy within him to slow down. I don't mind if you drink the soup, but I don't appreciate being schemed against, and I certainly don't like your attitude. Lin Dong's voice turned icy. With a flick of his arm, the overwhelming punch shot toward Mu Sha, who had hastily wrapped himself in layers of primordial energy to protect his body. The punch crashed into Mu Sha's defensive layers, and a low, muffled sound reverberated through the hall. The force of the blow sent shockwaves through the air, and to the astonishment of the onlookers, the protective barriers around Mu Sha's body began to crack and crumble. Blood spurted from Mu Sha's mouth as his body was thrown backward, crashing into the stone wall of the hall. The impact left cracks spiderwebbing across the wall. The experts of the Sand Dynasty paled in terror at the sight. They had heard rumors of Lin Dong defeating Shikuan, but that had been just hearsay. Mu Sha's strength far surpassed Shikuan's, yet here he was, utterly defeated in just a few exchanges. Lin Dong's figure blurred as he shot forward, appearing in front of Mu Sha in an instant. With a twist of his palm, he grasped Mu Sha's head, and a surge of devouring power exploded outward. The crowd watched in shock as a glowing orb was forcibly pulled from Mu Sha's skull. "Little Yin," Lin Dong called out, tossing the glowing orb toward Little Yin, who caught it midair and immediately absorbed it into his body. Mu Sha's eyes turned bloodshot as the inheritance martial art he had just acquired was forcibly taken from him. He turned abruptly and glared at Song Duan and Peng Fei, his voice laced with malice. "Do you really think that standing aside now will make him spare you later?" Mu Sha had already realized that on his own, he was no match for Lin Dong, who had obtained the fist intent of the Eight Extremities. To stand a chance, he would need to join forces with Song Duan and Peng Fei. Song Duan and Peng Fei exchanged a glance when they heard Mu Sha's words. After a moment, their clenched fists relaxed, and they raised their heads to face Lin Dong. With a calm smile, they said, "If Brother Lin Dong truly wants it, we will hand over the martial arts inheritance." The atmosphere in the hall grew still. Even Lin Dong was momentarily taken aback as he looked at the two. It was clear that no one expected these 2-second Nirvana stage powerhouses to surrender so easily. "You." Mu Sha was left speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief. His throat tightened, and a bitter taste of blood rose up. He hadn't anticipated that Song Duan and Peng Fei would be so crafty. Lin Dong smiled faintly as he observed them, quickly realizing their plan. Song Duan and Peng Fei didn't truly want to give up the martial arts inheritance, but they also knew how troublesome Lin Dong would be, now that he had the fist intent. By bowing their heads and publicly conceding, they were giving Lin Dong face in front of everyone. Their cleverness and willingness to bend to the circumstances surprised Lin Dong. Such treasures are for those destined to have them. Since you two have been blessed with this opportunity, it's not my place to say otherwise. Lin Dong nodded slightly, showing no intention of pressing them further. He smiled and let the matter go. Lin Dong's words echoed Mu Sha's earlier statement about the strong claiming the inheritance, but the underlying meaning was completely different. This only made Mu Sha's face turn a darker shade of green. It was clear Lin Dong was using him to make a point. In contrast, Song Duan and Peng Fei showed obvious relief. They cupped their fists toward Lin Dong, their expressions reflecting the benefits of their submission. Compared to Mu Sha, who had lost both face and treasure, they had chosen the far wiser path. "Lin Dong, don't think you've won. My Sand Dynasty will not let this go." Mu Sha's face alternated between pale and flushed as he spat his final words. The mocking gazes from those around him stung, and with one last defiant look, he wiped the blood from his lips and left with his people, filled with bitterness and anger. Lin Dong watched Mu Sha's retreating figure, but made no move to stop him. Although he had the ability to defeat Mu Sha, killing him would require using some of his hidden cards, and Lin Dong wasn't willing to reveal those just for someone like Mu Sha. Inside the grand hall, many people silently marveled at the scene they had just witnessed. Glances frequently shifted toward Lin Dong, as they struggled to believe that a single person had managed to make 3 powerful factions bow to him. "Let's go. It seems the 4 mysterious halls will open soon. That's where the real challenge lies," Lin Dong said, smiling at Little Yin. Without lingering any further, he turned and left, his figure disappearing from sight while Song Duan and the others watched with complicated expressions. Outside the stone hall, Lin Dong and Little Yin didn't waste any time and headed directly toward the deepest part of the secret realm. The trip to the Eight Extremities Sect's ruins had been quite fruitful. While Lin Dong hadn't obtained any martial arts inheritance, the fist intent of the Eight Extremities was a treasure far greater than any technique. Generally speaking, fist intent was a rare and powerful concept that only the strongest warriors, those who had reached a certain level could cultivate. Lin Dong's current strength was far from that level, though he might be able to grasp such intent in the future. For now, this chance to comprehend and absorb fist intent would undoubtedly be of tremendous benefit to his future growth. If the Eight Extremities Sect's ruins held such riches, I wonder who obtained the inheritance of the Earth Martial Sect, the top-ranked sect in the Guardian Sect. Lin Dong mused as he flew through the air. Everyone who had made it this deep into the secret realm was no ordinary person. There was no doubt that some of them might have even better fortunes than him. Little Yin, what inheritance did you obtain earlier? Lin Dong suddenly turned and asked with a smile, looking over at Little Yin behind him. It's a martial art, heavenly seal of the Eight Extremities. It seems to be a lower-tier spirit martial art. Little Yin scratched his head and grinned. He was clearly fond of the technique. The Eight Extremities Sect was known for its fierce and explosive style, which matched well with his own beastly constitution. This kind of powerful, forceful martial art suited him perfectly. A lower-tier spirit martial art, huh? Lin Dong praised with a nod. As expected from an ancient sect, even something casually obtained here was a spirit martial art. If this were taken outside, even the top-tier dynasties would fight over it. A spirit martial art, even at the lower tier, far surpassed any high-tier creation martial art. If this martial art from the Eight Extremities Sect is enhanced with the fist intent of the Eight Extremities, its power will undoubtedly multiply. Now that you have the martial art, this fist intent is essential for you. Lin Dong mused for a moment before placing his palm on Little Yan's body, sending a surge of fist intent into him. This fist intent will be quite useful to you. Take your time to comprehend it. It will be crucial for your future cultivation, Lin Dong advised. Although the fist intent he obtained was powerful, it wasn't truly his, so each time he used it, it diminished. Nevertheless, he didn't hesitate to share it with Little Yin, as strengthening his companion would ultimately benefit him in the challenges to come. Though they had reached the depths of the secret realm, the opponents they would face next were bound to be formidable. Many of them were top-tier experts from the Northwest region and beyond, some of the most well-known figures in the entire ancient battleground. Competing with them for the inheritance of the four mysterious halls and the elusive life and death samsara pill would be anything but easy. As Little Yin sensed the fist intent entering his body and felt its ferocious, explosive power, a gleam of excitement flashed in his eyes. The raw strength of this energy certainly lived up to the reputation of the Eight Extremities Sect. Boom! Just as Lin Dong finished transferring the fist intent to Little Yin, a deep, rumbling sound echoed from the distant horizon. Waves of immense energy radiated outward like tides, sweeping through the depths of the space ahead. The sudden commotion instantly alarmed everyone within the ancient treasure vault. Figures quickly soared into the sky, hovering in midair as they gazed in astonishment toward the source of the disturbance. What is that? Lin Dong's eyes narrowed as he stared intently at the distant space. After a moment, his pupils constricted sharply as he saw what appeared to be an enormous, majestic island slowly emerging from the depths of the rippling space. On the island, faint outlines of ancient and grand structures could be seen. Even from this great distance, the overwhelming aura of grandeur was palpable, leaving all who witnessed it in awe. The four great mysterious sect ruins. Lin Dong's eyes flashed with excitement, followed by a surge of joy. The most precious secret hidden in the deepest part of this realm had finally revealed itself. It seems the ruins of the five guardian sects have all been discovered, Lin Dong thought, his heart filled with admiration for the powerhouses hidden within the ancient battleground. In such a short time, all the guardian sect ruins had been uncovered. Let's go, Little Yin. This is where it all counts. Whether Little Mink can regain his body depends on what happens next. Lin Dong's eyes burned with determination as he shot forward, racing toward the newly revealed ruins. They had overcome countless obstacles to reach this point, and now the real challenge awaited. Got it. Little Yin nodded firmly, gripping his iron staff tightly. He knew that what lay ahead would be the fiercest competition they had faced since entering the ancient battleground. The sudden appearance of the four great mysterious sect ruins ignited a frenzy in the depths of the secret realm. No matter how composed or powerful the individuals who had entered this place were, they couldn't help but be stirred by excitement. The air was filled with the sound of wind tearing as figures shot through the skies from all directions, racing madly toward the distant space where the ruins had emerged. In the Eight Extremities Sect ruins alone, there had already been treasures like lower-tier spirit martial arts and even the fist intent of the Eight Extremities, something far beyond the control of any Nirvana practitioner. One could only imagine the level of inheritance within the four great mysterious sects, the heads of the Tiangang Alliance. The mere thought of it was enough to make anyone's blood boil. If someone could be fortunate enough to obtain just one inheritance from the four great mysterious sects, they could rise to unparalleled heights, standing out from the countless powerhouses in the ancient battleground, and become a top-tier or even elite-level existence. With such a temptation, even someone as composed as Lin Dong couldn't help but feel excitement coursing through his veins. It was hard to imagine anyone remaining calm in the face of such an opportunity. As countless figures surged toward the ruins, a small group emerged from a hidden relic in the northern part of the secret realm. So the four great mysterious sect ruins have opened? It seems the other 5 Guardian sect ruins have also been claimed. The leading figure of the group was none other than Liu Bai, whom Lin Dong had encountered earlier. Judging by their expressions, they had clearly discovered one of the Guardian sect ruins. Those guys are really lucky. We spent a great deal of effort finding the 3rd-ranked Great Yuan sect ruin. I wonder which fortunate people found the 2nd-ranked Eight Extremities Sect and the 1st-ranked Earth Martial Sect. A person behind Liu Bai commented with a light chuckle. The 5 Guardian sect ruins may be impressive, but they're just appetizers. The real main course is starting now. Let's not delay any further, Liu Bai said with a soft smile before leading the way toward the 4 great mysterious sect ruins, followed closely by Mu Hongling and the others. Demon Spear Liu Bai. From atop a distant mountain peak, a figure clad in a black robe watched as Liu Bai's group sped across the sky. A pale, slender hand emerged from the figure's sleeve as they lifted their heads slightly, revealing a gaunt yet familiar face. This was none other than Yen Sen, the mysterious figure Lin Dong had encountered not long after entering the ancient treasure vault. The 4 rulers of the Northwest region are all present. Interesting, Yen Sen smiled faintly as his gaze shifted to the western sky. Then, with a flicker of his body, he vanished mysteriously from the mountain peak. Boom! The ancient, heavy doors of a ruin suddenly exploded, and a figure was sent flying out, trailing blood in their wake. They looked fearfully at the shadowy figure emerging from the ruin's entrance, but before they could utter a word, a stone shot through the air, piercing their throat. On the wall of the ruin, faint and barely discernible marks formed a powerful Wu, martial, character, sharp and full of dominance. What a fine place! The tall, slender figure stretched lazily and smiled faintly before lifting his gaze toward the distant space. His eyes darkened with a cold, chilling light. Lin Dong is here too, isn't he? I'm quite curious to see how far he has come. I've said it before. I'll make sure that the entire Lin clan knows that I am the most talented person in the clan's history. As for Lin Dong, he's nothing more than a fleeting phenomenon. Sunlight poured down from the sky, illuminating the handsome yet sinister face of the figure. It was none other than Lin Langtian, who had been separated from Lin Dong for a long time.